Welcome to Classic Cinema. Tonight's movie is 1966's Zontar, The Thing from Venus, directed by Larry Buchanan. Remaking a movie is rarely, if ever, a good idea. There are very few remakes that are worth the film they're printed on. The only ones that come to mind are Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear and Alfred Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much. And the reason those work is because they took great movies and reworked them in a creative way. For the most part, however, remakes are created because the movie studios are looking to cash in on someone else's success without risk. You'll notice that no one ever remakes a movie that lost money. They can call it homage or reimagining as much as they want, but we all know what's really going on. In the case of tonight's movie, American International Pictures needed color releases to pad out its television packages, so they had Larry Buchanan remake 4 of their old properties. It Conquered the World became Zontar. Invasion of the Saucermen was remade as Attack of the Eye Creatures. The Day the World Ended became In the Year 2889, and The She Creature was retitled Creature of Destruction. Now, if you think the original movies are awful, you should take a look at the remakes Buchanan made. They're incredibly bad films, and Buchanan, to his credit, made no bones about that fact. He went on to make some more films, some of them fairly interesting, like 1964's The Trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, and 1976's Goodbye, Norma Jean. Larry Buchanan was born Marcus Larry Seal Jr. on January 31st, 1927 in Lost Prairie, Texas. An orphan, he was raised in a Baptist orphanage and at the age of 18 accepted a job as an apprentice in the prop department at 20th Century Fox after refusing a scholarship to study for the ministry. He was eventually hired as a contract player and his name was changed to Larry Buchanan by the studio. He appeared mostly in bit parts and became interested in directing and learned his craft by directing religious documentaries for evangelist Oral Roberts. He wrote for television's The Gabby Hayes Show and was nominated for a Peabody Award for directing 1951's The Cowboy. From there, he moved on to the ultra-low budget films he made for AIP and pretty much continued on this path for the rest of his career. He gave Ed Wood a run for the money in the Worst Director category on the Internet Movie Database. And in his obituary for the New York Times, Margalit Fox wrote, "One quality united Mr. Buchanan's diverse output. It was not so much that his films were bad. They were deeply, dazzlingly, unrepentantly bad." His work called to mind a famous line from H.L. Mencken, who, describing President Warren G. Harding's prose, said, "It is so bad that a sort of grandeur creeps into it." During the 60s, he filmed a number of exploitation films about everybody's favorite subject, sex and drugs, and shot a striptease movie, Naughty Dallas, at Jack Ruby's Carousel Club. Right on the heels of that, he shot and released The Trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, and later that decade embarked on a series of highly fictionalized biographical movies, including ones about Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison. His movies rarely had budgets over $100,000, and it shows. In 1966, he penned his autobiography, It Came from Hunger, Tales of a Cinema Schlockmeister. If you can find a copy, read it. It's very entertaining and full of great stories about his adventures in filmmaking. Larry Buchanan died on December 2nd, 2004 in Tucson, Arizona. John Agar was born on January 31st, 1921 in Chicago, Illinois. He appeared in 92 movies and television shows over the course of his career, often appearing as a leading man in horror and science fiction movies. He attended Harvard School for Boys in his hometown and then graduated from Pauling Prep School in New York. After serving as a drill sergeant in the Army Air Corps, he married America's sweetheart, Shirley Temple, and was offered a contract by David O. Selznick soon after. His first film was 1948's Fort Apache with John Wayne, and he appeared with Wayne again in 1949's She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. They became very close friends and remained so for the rest of their lives. While he never achieved true star status, he was a solid, reliable actor and always gave a good performance. He was popular with fans of westerns and science fiction movies and once said, "I don't resent being identified with B science fiction movies at all. Why should I? Even though they were not considered top of the line, for those people that like sci-fi, I guess they were fun. My whole feeling about working as an actor is if I give anybody any enjoyment, I'm doing my job, and that's what counts. John Agar died of emphysema on April 7, 2002 in Burbank, California. All I can tell you about Tony Huston is that he was the son of director John Huston, was married to his co-star Pat Delaney, and appeared in 8 pictures and television shows. He also wrote, or rewrote, 6 films for director Larry Buchanan, and appeared in 4 of them as an actor. As I mentioned before, remaking films isn't a good idea. They're never as good as the originals were, and if you want to see an absolutely stellar example of this, watch the 1957 remake of My Man Godfrey with David Niven and June Allison. I caught that one night on TV and wasn't able to watch more than 20 minutes of it. Most movies, especially classic ones, are products of their time, and updating them to fit present-day ideas and outlooks almost always ruins what made them so enjoyable to begin with. The thing I really hate about remakes is that they always sully the memory of an excellent movie. To tell you the truth, I even have a problem with Alfred Hitchcock's remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much, although my problem rests solely with the nauseating repetition of the song Que Sera Sera, which in my book is about as much fun to listen to as Sugar Sugar by the Archies. Now, the 1998 remake of Psycho by Gus Van Sant is not only miserable, but completely impossible to understand. First of all, it was, as all remakes are, unneeded, but this one was much more unneeded than is usual. I mean, the first version of the movie was perfect. The casting, the script, the way it was shot, and the only thing Van Sant could add to the mix was a totally gratuitous elaboration of what Norman did as he watched Marion Crane undress for her shower. The casting was all wrong as well. I think Anne Heche is a beautiful woman, especially since she let her hair grow out, but she's not in the same category as Janet Leigh was. Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates was wrong as well. He's a good actor, but as Norman? Vaughn pretty much specializes in playing confident, sometimes arrogant leading men, and he was just too handsome to play Norman. The Norman in the original story was a fat, bespectacled mama's boy with bad teeth, and although Anthony Perkins didn't fit the bill looks-wise, his nervous, stuttering performance fit the character perfectly. Gus Van Sant has made some really great movies, including one of my favorites, 1995's To Die For with Nicole Kidman. So what possessed him to try to out-Hitchcock Hitchcock is beyond me. Getting back to Zontar, well, it's just a lousy movie. Oddly, it has some rabid fans, as do all of Larry Buchanan's movies. A friend of mine even uses Zontar as part of his email address, so if you have an affinity for grade Z movies or a strong stomach, you may get more out of this movie than your average viewer. If you're brave enough to watch this movie all the way through, just keep a burp tray nearby in case you're not as strong as you thought. There's not much more I can add to that, so right now sit back, relax, and enjoy Zontar, the Thing from Venus, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.